All right, recording now, and I'm really excited to be talking to Juliette Pope today. Right now, Juliette Pope runs the portfolio. She's the portfolio manager of the Louis Dresner book, which has so many great things that we sell a lot of. But her history is in running Gramercy Tavern in the restaurant world for many, many years in New York City, and here she is talking to us.
Hi, nice to be here.
So we're
I would just add to make it clear that I work for Bowler Wine as the Louis Dresner manager.
Yes.
I just make the distinction because Louis Dresner also distributes its own wines, different wines directly. It's very confusing.
I don't even know that much about that side of the business, and I would like to learn more.
And you don't, and for these purposes, you don't need to, but I just wanted to make the distinction.
Today we were going to talk about a bottle that we sell, that we've sold in the shop for a while now. It's a really popular one, and I think it's great for the holidays. It's La Stoppa's Trebbiolo, and it's affordable, so lovely with food, by itself. It's just like, it's an all-around really easy and approachable wine to drink, and also natural, organic, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we were going to talk about today. And right before we started recording, I was just mentioning how, like, so in the 90s is when the state got converted to organic, and how, like, in Italy at that time, like, it's kind of a big deal. I wonder what Elena, like, went through when she did that in the 90s, like what the gossip was around it, and like what people.
Oh, I would like to know that too. We should have Elena on here, by the way. That would be, going straight to the source, and the horse would be ideal here. But it seems to have just been her natural inclination. She was very young at the time, early 20s, and was not planning to go into wine or take over the winery, but her father passed away suddenly, and she had a record and bookstore in the nearby large town or small city of Piacenza, and her mom called her back, said, "I need you." And right from the get-go, she started making that conversion from more conventional to what became full organic farming. So my sense has always been, I've never asked her, why did you do that? Because when you talk to her, it's so clear that it was so natural for her. I don't think she read a book and thought, well, this is what I ought to do. It appears to just be in her cells. And this is now decades later, so of course it is all in her cells, but my sense is that that was just her natural inclination, that natural would be the sensible, logical, smart way to go.
Yeah. And
you're right, it was uncommon at the time.
So. Yeah, I forgot to mention. So the wine is made of the two varietals, Bonarda and Barbera. Mm-hmm. And Elena had, like, ripped up all of the non-indigenous varietals that weren't, they weren't appropriate for the climate and the terroir in the region. And so those are native varietals to the region. I'm just curious. I don't know. I don't think I've ever had Bonarda, like, by itself, like as a single varietal. I don't know if you have. I'm just sort of wondering how the two complement each other. Obviously, I've had a lot of Barbera. There's a lot of, like, not great Barbera out there.
Sure. Sure.
Here too. Maybe you can say a little bit about those two varietals, because it's something actually I want to learn more about.
Well, Barbera definitely gives a deep color, a serious tannic structure, but also really high acidity. I think that the Bonarda's role is to soften the effect a little bit, because Barbera on its own can be, and not necessarily in a bad way, but very robust and very intense. And she does so little to manipulate her wines, and generally, with the exception of Trebbiolo, ages them for such a long time to allow them to sort of relax and integrate and become approachable. I think in order to release Trebbiolo sooner than she does any of her other wines, the Bonarda just takes the edges off, I would say. And as you said, it makes it something you can drink with or without food. It's very approachable. And I think the Bonarda helps temper the intensity of the Barbera quite a bit. But you're right. I mean, to my knowledge, and I don't by no means know everything, know that anyone bottles Bonarda singly. It seems to always be a blending partner. So I think just to round things out a little bit, make them a little softer, a little more approachable.
Yeah. It's a very soft wine. It's like velvety and like chocolate covered cherry kind of thing going on. And I think a lot of people.
Tons of cherry. Yeah, it's so soft and easy, but interesting. Not easy and simple, just very eminently drinkable.
I wonder if maybe Italian winemakers are hesitant to like adopt more natural practices because is it the ageability of the wine or like fear of not being able to have an age-worthy wine?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think that's all still, from my perception is that they're all still learning as they go. And so all the Italians that I get to work with through Louis Dresner at Bowler are well along that path. I mean, some haven't been as long as Elena has at La Stoppa, but many have for a long time. But it's all at different stages, work in progress. But I think part of it is maybe figuring out what will work locally. I mean, they do all export wine, obviously the ones that we work with, but they're also teaching the home crowd how to appreciate natural wines, local varietals, instead of international varietals made in such a way that they could be from anywhere, to have those, smoky, oaky, whatever characteristics that people associate with high scored, very almost neutral, I would say, wines. So I think it's been a work in progress over the years for them to sort of temper the old expectations and form new expectations for the home crowd.
Right.
Not to mention for the world. I mean, on the world stage, there are parts of the world that are way ahead of the US in terms of natural wine appreciation. Japan's off the charts, Scandinavia, leading the pack completely. The U.S. is way behind those countries in terms of appreciation and desire and thirst for natural wines. But I think that the Italians, along with probably the French too, had to and have to keep working on the home turf expectations as well.
So interesting. Yeah, actually, that's something I thought of before. Like, what percentage of her wines do we get? Like, does any of it even stay in Italy? Like,
that's a good question. I think for every winery it's different, and I have not asked for that. For sure, some of it, no doubt, some of it does, but I don't know percentages. I would have to ask Jules Dresner or Kevin McKenna to find that out, and they would tell me. I just don't know off the top of my head.
It's been a while since I was in Italy. Maybe I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe. But like, yeah, when I think about it, it's like if you just show up at a local spot, like they're not. Those natural winemakers that we have in New York, you're not gonna like find them on the local list there. Well,
more and more. I think that more and more there are little spots, wine bars and trattorie and shops and enoteche that are featuring them, and that's true right around them, I think, and also increasingly further afield in Italy. I mean, it's still not the most common, thing on a restaurant list maybe or in a shop, but just like it's not here either. But more and more there are little pockets of it, which is nice.
We're lucky to have a lot of the majority of that kind of stuff in New York. And
we're so lucky.
Yeah, we are really just lately I've been thinking about. So yeah, how much access we have to all this amazing stuff. So,
well, partly, you're partly thanks to you, since Depanneurs is helping drive that here. So,
well, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's. I just wanted to talk a little bit about one of our popular and very favorite bottles, of staff favorite and customer favorite. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add or maybe with the wine. I always like to end on that.
Sorry, you cut out.
A pairing with like a food pairing.
Oh, interesting. I would say, I mean, the Trebbiolo, as you said, is one of those gems that works with or without food. But in terms of being at the table, wow. I think in terms of, well, anything from charcuterie and cheese, but and partly that because that's what you're eating there when you're in that part of Italy in Emilia-Romagna. So much of it is driven by, well, let's face it, pork products rendered into various forms, which are incredible. So sitting at the table with a pile of, cured ham in whatever form and hard cheeses, it's absolutely delicious. But then with, red sauce pizza and pasta, I mean, thinking about things that we might tend to eat here in New York, very much, I think, an excellent red sauce kind of wine because it's not overly challenging. It's not going to compete with that, but it's certainly going to keep up with stronger flavors like that. There is a little bit, just a little tiny bit of residual sweetness in that wine, depending on the bottling, which, they bottle it several times a year. And this is very much alive. The way they make wines, they're very much alive. So as the bottling shift over the course of a year, as the wine comes out of botti or tank and goes into bottle, there's less and less of that residual sugar. So the bottlings actually get drier over the course of the life of that wine coming out of the winery. But I think that little touch of residual sweetness, which should not scare anybody off, it does not drink like a sweet wine, but has a certain softness to it because of that, means that it actually is going to be one of those rare reds that might work with spicy food. I haven't tested this out, but I'm thinking maybe like Chinese Szechuan might be too much, but maybe not. Indian with a high level of spice. This just popped into my head as possibilities, things that it might work with, because it's not bone dry and it's not very tannic. So I think the softness and the very, very gentle whisper of sweetness means it's actually a little more versatile than some red wines in that regard.
Wow, that is something to look into. Something with a little like yogurt base, something that had a touch of creaminess or something on the finish. But
yeah.
Cool.
So good for thought.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Of course.
And
happy to be here, and thank you for selling Trebbiolo. One of my favorites. I'm glad it's one of yours too.
Yeah, and I have Marcus to thank, who brought that in. Actually, Marcus, if you're watching, thank you for bringing it in.
Oh yes, thank you, Marcus.
All right, I'll talk.
It's a pleasure, Nicolina. Thank you.